Hey there! Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Francine Sinclair. I've been around the block in the entrepreneurial world, creating and repurposing social media content for experts and CEOs. I know firsthand how it can feel lonely, especially when you're mixing your Christian faith into your business life. So I figured, why should we go it alone? Who said that faith and business can't mix? And that's where this podcast comes in. Join me as we meet influential Christian entrepreneurs who are showing us how to blend business and faith in a way that works. We're here to prove that you can express your faith without compromising your business success. On the Influential Christian Entrepreneur, you're not just listening, you're part of the gang. So let's start this journey together. Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur Podcast, where we uncover the inspiring stories and strategies of successful Christian entrepreneurs. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of interviewing Laura Templeton, a dynamic entrepreneur and coach who specializes in helping her clients connect with clarity, confidence, and compassion. With a strong foundation in her faith, Laura has developed a unique coaching approach that empowers Christian entrepreneurs to communicate their message effectively while staying true to their values. Through her expertise in sales training, personal development, and networking, she equips her clients with the tools and strategies they need to authentically connect with their audience and make a lasting impact. Get ready to be inspired and equipped with practical insights on the Influential Christian Entrepreneur Podcast. Welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for coming on today. Today's our third episode.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to share my wisdom with your audience. I love supporting people in their journey, and I'm excited about your new podcast, The Influential Christian Entrepreneur. It's beautiful. Thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you so much. And you were one of the first people I reached out to. And, the premise of this podcast is, we've always been told that it's not okay to mix business with our faith. So I'm on a journey to discover what other Christian entrepreneurs think about that. But first of all, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your story. When did you become a Christian?
Oh my goodness. I've actually been a Christian for a really long time. My children were little. I had been a Christian for a lot of years. I actually accepted the Lord as my Savior when I was 16 years old. But I kept walking in the world, right? I kept, just one foot in, one foot out. And I remember a moment in time when my daughter was born, and she's now 28. She's a mom herself. And she was very colicky. And I found myself on my knees one in the middle of the night, one night, like just begging the Lord. I'm like, Lord, I can't do this. I can't do this. I need your strength. I need your guidance. Help me. And I felt like in that moment, everything changed. My relationship with God became stronger. I connected with Mothers of Preschoolers, which is a Christian organization. I don't know if you've heard of MOPS. So I kind of found a lifeline. And sometimes in our faith and in our walk, we have a tendency to drift. And, that lifeline was the thing that I needed to pull me back to, really finding a strong faith and walking in it on a daily basis.
So it's been a long time since you became a Christian, or actually stuck to instead of going back and forth like we all do. My back and forth, I was in the Christian faith in a way because I grew up in the Catholic Church, but it was more about, I used to be dragged to church every Sunday kind of thing. My grandmother made me walk 10 miles to go see Pope John Paul in 1982, Pope John Paul II in 1982 when I was 10. That was the longest walk of my life. But, I kind of fell out of it when I was like 18. And I always considered myself, I'm a believer. But I didn't really know. I thought that just believing in God and believing in Jesus Christ was enough. I never, went to church. I never read the Bible. I never did any of those things. But to me, I was, a spiritual person. I believed in God. I'm a believer. And it wasn't until 2020, the big year, that I got online and I became an entrepreneur. And somewhere along the road, someone planted seeds somewhere. I maybe saw a few posts of people posting about Jesus, and it planted a seed in me, which started to grow. And as I started to grow in my faith little by little, because then I actually bought myself a Bible and started reading, I realized, oh my gosh, I really don't see a whole lot of Christians online in the online space, because if they are Christians, they're not really letting anybody know. And I felt really alone. And so back to that question, I felt like it wasn't okay to me. You got to separate business and your faith, and you have to separate business and politics and all of that stuff, because it got really nasty out there. But my question to you is, Laura, is it actually okay to mix business and your faith, Jesus Christ, God? What do you think?
That's a beautiful question. And it's something that I think a lot of believers really grapple with, because especially when we know who our ideal client is, our audience is, and we want to have a bigger platform, we want to have a bigger impact in the world. So how do we open the door to share our faith in conversation, right? So sometimes, there's that opportunity to really step into it. One of the things that I've done, and it's kind of like one of those little test the waters, stick your toe in and test the waters to see how people respond, is I've actually put a faith quote on the main page of my website. And I've had other believers who visited my website come and say, oh my gosh, I really appreciate the fact that you put a quote on yours. I've been nervous about sharing my faith, but I know you're a Christian and we can talk about this. So it's opening the door. Like I will periodically share stuff on social media the same way. Like it's like in drips. It's not over the top, like in your face, but it's just like in my bio, I say I'm a woman of faith. I talk about that even when I'm sharing. It's one of those discerning moments for me, especially as a professional speaker. If I'm sharing my bio with an organization and I mention that I am faith, I am a woman of faith, and they count me out, they say, yeah, we can't have her on our stage. Well, then that's not a stage I'm meant to be on.
Ooh, has that actually ever happened to you where they've not had you on?
It has never happened, but that's been a big, not that I know of, right? So, but it's never happened. And I know for a lot of people who are, really strong in their faith, that is a big fear. They don't want to be on the wrong platform, right? Especially when there's a hidden agenda within an organization. When you're out there as a speaker and you're applying for a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different events, and then you find out that you're showing up on stage with somebody who has a very politicized agenda that you do not agree with, then it's hard to extract yourself. So, including in your bio that you are someone of faith, that you are a believer, that you're not ashamed of that, allows an event planner to kind of go, maybe this isn't a good match, right? Or, hey, it's about time we had somebody that's speaking out about their faith. Sometimes they are encouraged by that. So it allows you to make better connections with the people that you're meant to serve.
It allows you. So do you believe in being explicit about our faith on our social media channels? That's the area in which I work in. I help people with repurposing their content and being visible on social media. But even for myself, it was such a big fear of putting it out there, because I felt like I was going to lose business. Like I was going to put myself in a box and people were going to consider me probably, I don't know what exactly I thought people would think about me. I think what I used to think people would think about me was that I am judgmental and I was going to throw a Bible at them or something, you know what I mean? Like I was a Jesus freak, and so being afraid of that, I held back for 3 years. Because I was just terrified. I didn't see anybody doing it. So I think that's important too, that as Christians, we need to be a little bit more stand up about it. What do you think? And actually, explicitly, it doesn't mean every day all the time, but explicitly making it known that you are a Christian, you are a follower of Jesus Christ. What do you think about that?
I think that there's obviously, I've been very measured in how I put a lot of things out there, and that was by choice, right? So I think, we talk about, I love the fact that you mentioned that with the Influencer and Christian Entrepreneur podcast, that the name came to you, right? It's that divine observation, and you hear the voice, and it's like, this is it. Same thing happened with the name of my company, 30 Second Success. And I just saw God's hand in everything that was happening, like and always being in a heart of service. So being able to speak in the secular world about having a heart of service and coming from a place of love and compassion and pouring into other people without, I think a lot of times people assume that as Christians, we're going to be in their face, that they need to be converted, right?
Yeah,
and that's not always the case, right? We just want to share, and we want to love on people and live and serve from a place of being an example, right? This is what it's like to walk in faith. This is what it's like. I'm not ashamed, and I'm not afraid to tell somebody when they've shared with me that they are struggling, I'm praying for you. Right. I will say it publicly. I'll put it in a post. Hey, I know you're going through a lot right now. I'm happy to pray for you if there's anything specific that you need. Again, that's a testimony of my faith, and people appreciate that. I've never had somebody say to me, please don't pray for me. I've never had somebody who say that to me.
You haven't? Okay.
No, I haven't. And that's the thing. We can sprinkle our faith without being over the top.
Yeah,
right?
without being over the top.
Exactly. Right. And when we put our faith out there, we start to attract other people to us that are like-minded and like-hearted, right? Other people of faith that are searching for a community of believers.
Or the people out there who something has softened in their heart, and they are starting to think and seek, and they may not be really aware of it yet, but there's an opening there. And by not being over the top and just putting subtle things out there, you may be planting a seed. Do you see it like that too?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, that's you're opening up the door for somebody who is curious about faith, right? And that's one of the things that it's funny that you said that, because the other day I was reviewing one of my workbooks that I created for a workshop that I do, and the same thing with my book, 30 Second Success, Ditch the Pitch. In the dedication in the beginning, I always mention my faith. I always, thank the Lord and give him credit for all of the work that I'm doing, because without him, I might be in a very different place right now. And I know that all the things that I'm doing he has a purpose. He has a plan for me, right? And he is showing me his direction. It's my choice to follow his direction. Right? Somebody recently said to me, when you have all the, I have bazillion ideas coming at me constantly. Like this morning, I literally wrote down a list of podcasts that I would love to create. And I'm like, wait, I've been bucking the system about starting a podcast, and now all of a sudden there's these 4 ideas that are like bubbling to the person. I'm like, I'm not just going to start 1. I'm going to start 4. Like, yeah, right. That's not, it's like, okay, but here's the thing. Somebody once said to me, when God gives you an idea, if you do not act on it, he will find someone else who will. Who am I to not act on his calling? And it's like, okay, God, I've got enough on my plate. I don't know if I can take on one more thing. He gives you the ability to do so, if you so choose to follow him.
Now, that's a question that I had, because before I started this podcast, exactly a month ago is when the idea came to me. And I was like, no, I didn't know if it was, okay, I'm coming up with these things. Like, how do you know? Because I'm newer here, and I know this is probably something that other people may wonder, like, how do you know it's God telling you this? Or how do I know? Like, I was talking to myself, am I getting myself into another shiny object with this podcast type of thing? And is it really me, or am I making this whole thing up? And I think when things just started happening so fast, and I was even given the name because I didn't have to think about it for a second. And I didn't know anything about podcasting, and everything just fell in line. Like I found the software I want to use. I found everything just arranged itself. I can't explain it. Okay.
Right.
Because I asked God, well, I don't know anything about this. Is this me? Then that started to happen. That's the way that I knew. But does it happen like that for you also? Or is there another way?
No, it's when you really start to tune in and know what God's voice is. Sometimes we need to slow down enough that we're listening, right? And those voices that come to us and reveal opportunities are so apparent that you can't ignore them, right? You just can't ignore them. And it's like, all right, Lord, if you want this to happen, you're gonna show me the steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're
You
gonna show
tell
me
him
how.
that just like that. That's what you like actually tell him like that.
I absolutely do. I'm like, okay, Lord, I don't know how to do this. Show me. Show me how. Show me who.
You can speak to God like you're speaking to, well, he's your father. So you can speak to him like you're speaking to another person. A lot of people have this idea. I used to always have the idea that I had to like just have the perfect setting, say certain things, start a prayer in a certain way, in a certain structure. It had to be really quiet. And if I got distracted, then I have to start over again. Kind of like, in my mind, it just has to be this perfect process, but it doesn't. You can just be like speaking to him.
Yeah. And that's just it. It's so funny because I talk to him all day long, right? There are moments during my days. The biggest piece for me is getting quiet.
Yeah.
Because sometimes my brain is just like it's on fire. Like there's all this stuff going on and I'm like getting distracted. So the easiest thing for me and the best way for me to communicate with God is to step away from my desk, step outside, get somewhere quiet so that I can hear his voice, And most of the time it's me talking to him. And then I just have to remember that I just need to be quiet and like, okay, wait for him to respond. Right? Yeah. And most of the time, there are times where I don't get a response, right? It's like, all right, Lord, I'm just laying this at your feet. I don't know what to do with it, where to go with it. I'm going to wait on you. And those are the moments where it's like, I'm not hearing any kind of feedback here. Maybe I don't need to act on this right now.
And that is one of the things that used to confuse me the most. Like, how is it that you are hearing this? Like, is it audible? Not necessarily, right?
Right.
Not necessarily. It's kind of like, I would describe it as a gut feeling, as a nudge, or like you said, something just becomes abundantly clear at some point. You're doing something and it's just the weirdest thing. There's not one way, right? One person out of the nowhere can come and tell you something that like, So I used to get really discouraged and like, how is it that people hear God? I don't hear anything. Like, why isn't he talking to me? He's never talked to me. And so I think that comes as you read the Bible and you pray. It's kind of like when your muscles are atrophied and you need to start exercising to make your muscles get stronger. It's something that you start exercising. You use faith and exercise that faith in continuing to pray and read the word of the Lord, and it will start to get stronger. It's a muscle, right? In my mind, because I don't think I ever had this ability before, which is why I wanted to get your input. But then I have another question, Laura, because, I remember a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago exactly, putting out for Christmas a, Merry Christmas. It was Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. And I had a couple of people get offended and actually go in my DMs and tell me that, I just feel like you're kind of pushing your religion. And that stopped me right in my tracks. Like, maybe this is not appropriate to do. But then I see that other people who have other beliefs, whether it's another religion or another like spirituality, they are more than, it's like fine for them. I feel like nobody gives them any, slack for posting about their beliefs, what they believe in, whether it's, astrology or reading tarot cards or Akashic records or whatever. People actually think that's super cool, but they don't think that being a Christian talking about Jesus is cool. I feel what's going on there?
Yeah. And that's a whole conversation that a lot of people, tend to avoid, And I think that in my opinion, because from a political perspective, Christianity has been attacked, and there's been such an effort to silence Christian beliefs, whether it's in our church, in our communities, in our government. People have gotten to the point where they feel like they're being attacked constantly for sharing their faith, right? For sharing their Christianity. And so it comes down to what's being taught in the community. There's a really great book that I've read by Napoleon Hill, and it's called Outwitting the Devil. He wrote it in 1937. He talks about how the devil really kind of comes in and causes people to drift, how he attacks Christianity and the faith, and how he causes people to just kind of go along with all the things that are happening. And it's so relevant to what's happening today. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't published until 2011, because his wife at the time, who was a very, very devout Christian woman of faith, was so afraid that if he published this book, they would be ostracized by their church and their community. So he waited. And she passed away. Well, he passed away before she did. Right. So then her nephew took over the foundation. His wife had the same reaction to the manuscript. Mm-hmm. Once his wife passed away, he finally published it in 2011, because the world really needed this book.
Yes.
And
thank you for telling me. I never knew about it.
It's very interesting. It's very intense. I actually, the first time I listened to it on Audible, and there's an actual interview with the devil. So to hear the interview as opposed to reading it, like now I've read the book, but I also listened to it. It had such a profound impact regarding how we should be practicing, what we believe in and the behaviors in our life, as opposed to being set adrift, because we are all called to do amazing work in this world. We're not called to just, drift along and then, okay, I was born, I'm going to drift, and then I'm going to, we're all living to die, right? That whole mentality, but we were all born to do amazing things. It's whether or not we choose to do them from the calling that's been set in front of us, or if we're distracted by all the things that the enemy, the devil, has set in place as traps. Yeah. So it's really interesting from his perspective. And Napoleon Hill doesn't actually it is interesting because he talks about the devil. He does not actually, say that this was, divinely or God-given conversation or information, but it's written in such an interesting way that really is eye-opening, especially for the believer. I've had conversations with my friend down the street who is Catholic, very strong in her Catholic faith. She read the book. We've had some great conversations around it. And just even awareness of what's being taught in our schools and in our universities, and how our children are being manipulated by what's going on, and how, we're not producing people that we're not encouraging that faith be part of their foundations. Right. Yeah. And that's a big piece of it. So,
well, and I think that believers, we have a great deal of responsibility in terms of how we've let things get so out of hand by not being involved, by not standing up, by thinking that if we just kind of stay neutral and sit in the background, we'll be okay and things will just kind of blow over. But we're seeing right now that no, it's not going to blow over if we don't stand up and be strong and speak out. Things will not. That's what Jesus wants us to do, right? When he came here, it wasn't easy for him. He was persecuted. He was even killed. All his apostles died horrible deaths, except for, I believe, John or Paul, one of them. So it's not meant to be easy, but he didn't give us the spirit of fear. And we have to exercise our courage or it will leave us. And along with that, everything else, right? So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs, Christian entrepreneurs? There are a lot of people who have started in the online space. I think since 2020, a lot of people have gone on to become entrepreneurs, and we're being exposed to a lot of stuff out there. And even if you don't believe it, when the things that we see, affect us, we may not think they affect us, but they do. What advice would you give to other Christian entrepreneurs? Should we stand up and be more vocal with love, compassion? It's not about forcing people, because that's what turns people off, just the accusatory type of, ram down your throat type of approach, but how, if for somebody who like me is shy, I just recently came out with my first, I would consider Christian post when I announced my podcast. And how would you recommend that we do that? Because, for example, on platforms like LinkedIn, which seems very buttoned up, very serious, it is a lot more intimidating there than even on Facebook to post content. So because you're a coach, what recommendation would you give to somebody who's afraid of letting people know and standing up for Jesus online, on social media specifically?
Okay, good question. So on social media, and you mentioned it beautifully, because each platform is very different, right? So choose the platform. Number one, when it comes to your business, what type of business is it? How are you weaving your faith into your business? Are you weaving your faith into your business, right? So I do it in a very simplistic way. I work with everyone. I have clients that are in the holistic practitioner space. I have a couple clients that are human design specialists. I have one that does, other psych case work. And, it opens us up for great conversations. So make sure that you're having conversations with people. Don't hide your faith. Don't hide your beliefs, and share them with people, and allow for questions, right? The questions that come up in this space. Like you and I were introduced through Christy Crippen. Yes. And Christy and I have had numerous conversations about faith, right? Yes. And that's been a beautiful opportunity. So building your network, having conversations with people, helping people know who you are. Yes. And to experience spending time with you. Mm-hmm. But posting on social media can be a very advantageous to promote your business. One of the things that I love doing, and I've gotten out of the practice and I need to get back into it, is I actually will share. I'm looking at redoing my marketing plan. My social media marketing plan is Sundays are faith-based messages, right? But they're faith-based messages that encourage business, right? How are we, as believers, how do we put into practice what we have found in our faith and in the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. How to bring those to fruition. So, sharing periodically, like you said, it's not about ramming your faith down everybody's throat, because then they're not going to be receptive. Be gentle, right? Be gentle, be kind, be loving, compassionate. When somebody is engaging with other people on their posts who may be going through something very traumatic, share with just a simple thing as sharing, I'm really sorry for what you're going through. I'll be praying for you and your family. Right. That lets people know, hey, I'm a person of faith. I have a belief that prayer can heal a lot of people. There's amazing stories out there about prayer and what it's done for people. And the interesting thing, and Francine, I love this, social media, yes, different platforms, you can share different things, right? Right. Get comfortable sharing. Be consistent in what you are sharing. Don't, like one of the things that I have a fear around is if I'm sharing about business, and then all of a sudden I start talking about faith and it's a totally different topic, it kind of like affects my brand. But if I'm sharing about business and faith, it becomes part of my brand. Right. You have to weave it in. Yes. Yeah. So, like mix it, making sure that it's part of who you are, part of your brand, part of your messaging. How do you do that? How do you weave that in? Simply, adding a little bit to your bio, sharing a video that really speaks to your heart. But how does it speak to your business as well? Yes. Right? So, and bringing that business piece back in and how does it relate, right? And that encourages other people to do the same and seek the information.
And another way that I think that people can do it is when they share their personal stories. It's very easy to weave, your beliefs and Jesus and your faith into your personal stories. And that really never offends anyone because you're just speaking about your personal story. So if you don't know how to do it, then that's probably a good way to do it, to share your personal stories.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I will say the one thing that I have found, and I don't know if you have, tell me if you have, it's interesting now, I will have people that will reach out to me privately and ask me to pray for them.
It hasn't happened to me yet because I just started letting people know. I was the Christian who was like in the background, like, and the comment I'd say, I think God is trying to send you a message, or I'd give little hints and things in here, but I was terrified of, and I think in a way, it's almost like denying Jesus. Like, who was the guy, the apostle who denied him 3 times before the crow went off? Okay, when they were about to crucify him. Yeah, sorry, rookie here, but learning. So I felt like I have denied Jesus in a way because I've been afraid of sticking up for him in so many occasions because I was afraid of being judged. And I did stick up for him. And then many times sometimes I stuck up for him. I felt like maybe I shouldn't have done that, And so it's a process and it doesn't all happen at once. Right. Not for everybody. Maybe some people have a radical experience that they all of a sudden but for me, it's been a really slow process, sticking to it. Right.
Right.
And so I think that is fantastic. I love the insights that you gave us, Laura. And I love that you really emphasize on you don't have to do it any one way. You don't have to, put it explicitly out there. Yes, if you are primarily on LinkedIn, which is mostly business, you can do it in other ways. You don't have to do it in any way that you feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, you also mentioned that it's kind of like you're nudged, right? And somebody else said that you're nudged. You have to when the inspiration comes from the Holy Spirit, it'll guide you on the best way to do it. And it'll always feel aligned with you. But it's also important to start weaving it into your personal brand.
Absolutely.
Because for me, it's really about our ministry. It's really about subtly planting seeds, being subtle with it. But if they're not there, if those seeds aren't there, how are people going to get them? So planting seeds, think of yourself as a gardener. And I think that's the best way to go. So that is all for today's episode. I thank everybody for listening. Laura, can you tell everyone what's the best way to contact you if they, really resonated with you? How would they reach you? Where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on just about every social media platform at 30 Second Success. I'm very well branded with 30 Second Success. So it's the number 30 and then spell out the word second and success. Or visit my website, 30secondsuccess.com.
Yeah. Or you can pull her up by Laura Templeton on LinkedIn. That's your primary platform, right? LinkedIn.
Yeah. LinkedIn is my primary platform. And again, I'm 30 Second Success there too. So
30 Second Success there too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So thank you, everybody. We will be back with another episode next week on The Influential Christian Entrepreneur. Until next time, take care. If you're a faith-driven expert or entrepreneur and you need help with content creation for social media, check out my website at francineSinclair.com. Contact me and let's chat. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening today. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and don't forget to follow me, Francine Sinclair, on Facebook or LinkedIn. See you next week for a new episode.